The courtroom in Chicago, Illinois hummed with anticipation, a palpable tension hanging in the air like the scent of old paper and nervous sweat as the high-profile trial of Daniel Foster began. Every eye was fixed on the defendant, a man whose quiet demeanor belied the monstrous charge against him, the brutal murder of Olivia Bennett, a vibrant 26-year-old graphic designer. Her lifeless body had been discovered, strangled, in a deserted alley near the unforgiving expanse of Lake Michigan on the chilling night of March 15, 2025. The prosecution, led by the formidable Elizabeth Harper, meticulously painted Daniel, Olivia's former fiancé, as a scorned lover consumed by a jealous rage after she abruptly severed their engagement. As his defense attorney, I, Thomas Reynolds, felt an unsettling dissonance. My gut, honed by years of navigating the labyrinthine corridors of justice, screamed that a deeper, more sinister truth lay buried beneath the prosecution's seemingly compelling, yet ultimately flimsy evidence. My solemn duty, my singular focus was to unearth that truth before an innocent man was irrevocably condemned to a life he didn't deserve. The prosecution's case, meticulously constructed, rested precariously on three main pillars. First, a silver heart-shaped locket, allegedly Daniel's, found tantalizingly close to the crime scene, inscribed with Olivia's initials. Second, the emotionally charged testimony of Olivia's best friend, Claire Morgan, who vehemently claimed Daniel had relentlessly stalked Olivia in the agonizing weeks following their breakup. And third, a frustratingly blurry security camera image, purportedly showing Daniel's distinctive build near the desolate alley during the critical time frame. Yet, as I tirelessly pored over every page of the voluminous case files, red flags, vibrant and alarming, began to unfurl, glaring omissions of crucial forensic tests, the unsettling unreliability of key witnesses, and a timeline riddled with inconsistencies and gaping holes. Each discovery fueled my resolve. I was absolutely determined to expose the profound cracks in their carefully crafted, yet ultimately fragile story. The first hearing, the trial, commenced with the solemn gravitas befitting a murder case. The prosecution's first witness, Detective Samuel Carter, the lead investigator, strode confidently to the stand. He was a burly man, his broad shoulders filling out his suit, with a no-nonsense demeanor that spoke of countless hours spent in grim crime scenes. He took the oath, his voice a low rumble, and delivered his initial statement with an almost unsettling confidence, recounting in stark detail the grim discovery of Olivia's body at 1 a.m. by a startled jogger. Her neck bore the telltale bruising of manual strangulation, distinct finger marks etched into her skin, her face frozen in a mask of terror that sent a shiver down the spines of many in the gallery. "Detective Carter," I began, my voice calm yet carrying, as I approached the witness box with measured, deliberate steps. "You led the investigation into Olivia Bennett's tragic murder, correct?" "Yes, sir," he replied, his gaze steady, unwavering. "The post-mortem report, detective, states unequivocally that Olivia died between 10 p.m. and midnight on March 15th from strangulation," I continued, holding up the official report, its pages rustling softly. "Is that accurate based on your findings?" "Correct," he nodded, a slight tightening around his jaw. "The report also notes deep, significant bruising on her neck, consistent with manual strangulation." I pressed, my voice dropping slightly for emphasis. "Would you, as an experienced investigator, agree that the killer applied a truly significant, perhaps even brutal, degree of force?" "Absolutely," he said, his eyes flicking briefly, almost imperceptibly, towards Daniel in the dock. "A silent accusation. And the locket, detective, the silver heart-shaped locket found so conveniently near Olivia's body," I said, holding up a large, clear photograph of the item, allowing the jury to see it. "You claim, with certainty, that it belongs to the accused, Daniel Foster?" "Yes," he stated firmly, his voice devoid of doubt. "It has Olivia's initials, OB, clearly engraved on its surface." "Engraved initials," I repeated, allowing the words to hang in the air, creating a deliberate pause for dramatic effect. My gaze fixed on the detective. "Detective, when an individual strangles another person, their hands are, by definition, in extremely close and forceful contact with the victim's neck, correct?" Naturally, he agreed, a hint of impatience creeping into his tone. And in such horrific cases, Detective, it is often the case that fingerprints or even DNA, perhaps skin cells or sweat from the killer's hands, are transferred to the victim's skin or clothing, particularly under their fingernails if there was a struggle, I continued, my voice gaining a sharper edge. Did your forensic team recover any clear identifiable fingerprints from Olivia's neck? Carter shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his earlier confidence wavering. We didn't find clear fingerprints, he admitted, his voice now slightly less assured. No clear fingerprints, I repeated, my tone now undeniably sharp, cutting through the courtroom's silence. What about DNA, Detective? Skin cells, sweat, anything at all under her fingernails that might have been collected during a desperate struggle for her life? The tests were inconclusive, he admitted, his eyes avoiding mine. Inconclusive, I said, letting the word resonate, allowing its implication of failure to sink in. So, Detective, to be absolutely clear, no identifiable fingerprints, no conclusive DNA evidence, yet you are unequivocally certain Daniel Foster is the killer, based solely on a locket that, frankly, could belong to anyone, or even be a common gift? Objection, Your Honor. The prosecution lawyer, Elizabeth Harper, interjected, her voice rising in indignation. Counsel is arguing, not questioning the witness. Sustained, the judge, Honorable Margaret Ellis, said, her voice firm but even. Mr. Reynolds, please confine yourself to direct questions. My sincerest apologies, Your Honor, I said, bowing my head slightly, though my eyes remained locked on Carter as I turned back to him. Detective, did you or anyone on your team bother to test the locket itself for fingerprints or DNA evidence, to forensically confirm that it was, in fact, Daniel's, and not merely a piece of jewelry with common initials? We didn't see the need, he said, his jaw tightening, a defensive note entering his voice. Claire Morgan identified it as his, and her identification was sufficient. Claire Morgan, I said, nodding slowly, a subtle smirk playing on my lips. Olivia's best friend, so, Detective, you relied solely on her word, an emotionally invested witness, without any independent forensic verification whatsoever. Carter hesitated, his gaze darting around the courtroom. Her identification was credible, he insisted, though his conviction now sounded hollow. Credible, I said, allowing my voice to drip with a carefully measured sarcasm, a subtle challenge to his professionalism. Detective, when exactly was Daniel Foster officially informed of Olivia's death? The next morning around 6 a.m., he replied, regaining some of his composure. We brought him in for initial questioning at the precinct. And where did Daniel state he was, Detective, between the critical hours of 10 p.m. and midnight, on the night of the murder? I asked, leaning slightly forward. He claimed he was at a bar in Wicker Park with friends, Carter said, a dismissive wave of his hand. But we couldn't confirm his alibi initially, as his friends were not immediately available. Couldn't confirm, I echoed, making a mental note to highlight this later. One final question, Detective. The security camera image you claim shows Daniel near the alley. How clear, precisely, is this crucial piece of evidence? It's grainy, admittedly, he conceded, a slight frown creasing his brow. But the build and the general clothing description match Daniel's known attire. Match, I said, allowing a sardonic smile to touch my lips. Your Honor, the prosecution's profound reliance on an untested locket, the complete absence of verifiable fingerprints or DNA evidence from the crime scene, and a notoriously blurry, ambiguous security camera image is not merely weak. It is, quite frankly, a travesty of justice. I respectfully request the court to take formal note of these significant and alarming investigative lapses. Noted, Judge Ellis said, her expression unreadable. Anything further, Mr. Reynolds? No further questions, Your Honor, I said, turning crisply and returning to my seat, a quiet satisfaction settling over me. The seeds of doubt had been sown. The judge set the next hearing for 10 days later, a short reprieve, and adjourned the court. The murmurs began almost immediately as the gavel fell, a clear indication that my cross-examination had resonated. The second hearing. The prosecution's next witness was Claire Morgan, Olivia's best friend, and, in their narrative, a pivotal figure in their case. Claire, a poised woman in her late 20s, her sharp features framed by perfectly styled hair, took the stand with a practiced air of composure and swore to tell the truth. In her initial statement, delivered with a trembling voice that nonetheless carried conviction, she painted Daniel as a controlling, obsessive ex who simply could not accept the painful reality of the breakup. She tearfully recounted how Olivia had confided in her, claiming Daniel had relentlessly followed her to work, appearing unexpectedly, and had deluged her with a barrage of threatening texts, including one chilling message that allegedly read, "You'll regret leaving me." Her testimony was designed to evoke sympathy and outrage, and it clearly had an impact on some of the jurors. After Harper's relatively brief and gentle cross-examination designed to reinforce Claire's emotional distress, I approached Claire. "Ms. Morgan," I said softly, my voice laced with genuine empathy, "I am truly sorry for your profound loss. Olivia was your closest friend, wasn't she? More like a sister, perhaps?" "Yes," she said, her voice indeed trembling, her eyes welling up. "We were like sisters, inseparable." "You told the court, Ms. Morgan, that Daniel sent Olivia threatening texts," I said, my tone shifting subtly, becoming more direct. "Do you, by any chance, have those messages? Were they preserved?" "They were on Olivia's phone," she said, her gaze dropping. "But it was stolen the night she died, a terrible coincidence." "Stolen," I repeated, raising an eyebrow, allowing a hint of skepticism to enter my voice. "How remarkably convenient, Ms. Morgan. Did you ever personally see these specific texts yourself, or were you merely recounting what Olivia told you?" "No, but Olivia showed me one, just one," she insisted, her voice rising slightly in defense. "It was definitely from Daniel. I saw it on her screen." "You saw one text," I said, pressing the point, emphasizing the singular. "Ms. Morgan, did you happen to note the phone number it came from, or perhaps the exact time and date it was sent?" "No, but Olivia said it was him," she insisted, her frustration growing evident. "She wouldn't lie to me." "So, Ms. Morgan, to be clear, we have your word, based entirely on what Olivia allegedly told you regarding these threatening messages," I concluded, allowing the implication of hearsay to hang in the air. "Ms. Morgan, you also identified the locket found at the crime scene as Daniel's. Given the darkness of the alley, how well lit was the area where this locket was discovered?" "It was dark," she admitted, her shoulders slumping slightly, "but I'd seen him wear it before many times." "Seen him wear it," I said, holding up the locket photo again, ensuring the jury could see its generic design. "Ms. Morgan, this is a very common heart-shaped locket, mass-produced and sold in countless jewelry stores across the country. Did it possess any unique, identifiable features, perhaps a specific scratch, an unusual dent, or a truly custom engraving that would unequivocally confirm it was Daniel's and not just one of a million similar lockets?" "It had OB engraved," she said, her voice firming slightly. "Olivia's initials." "Olivia's initials," I countered, a subtle smile playing on my lips, which Miss Morgan could just as easily mean it was hers, not his. Perhaps a gift from her to him, or even a locket she owned herself. "Miss Morgan, were you aware that Olivia had started dating someone new, a Mr. Ryan Coleman, after her breakup?" "With Daniel?" Claire's eyes flickered, a momentary flash of surprise or perhaps discomfort. "She mentioned someone vaguely," she said, her voice suddenly evasive, "but I didn't know any details. She was very private about her new relationships." "You didn't know?" I said, feigning genuine surprise, my voice laced with disbelief. "Ms. Morgan, you claimed you were like sisters, her closest confidant. Surely, as her sister, you must have known who she was seeing, especially if it was a serious relationship." "She was private about it," Claire repeated, her voice now tight, almost defensive. Her composure was beginning to fray. "Private," I said, nodding slowly, letting the word hang in the silence. "Miss Morgan, isn't it true that you had a significant falling out, a rather heated argument with Olivia just a week before her tragic death?" "No," she said quickly, perhaps too quickly, her denial ringing hollow. "We were fine. Just a minor disagreement, nothing serious." "Fine," I said, pulling out a document, a copy of a police statement from a witness. "Yet, Olivia's co-worker Emily Watson states under oath that she witnessed you and Olivia engaged in a very public and heated argument at a cafe, and that Olivia left the cafe visibly upset and distressed. Care to explain this discrepancy, Ms. Morgan? Objection, Your Honor, Harper interjected, leaping to her feet. Hearsay. This is irrelevant speculation. Your Honor, I countered, my voice firm. I am not speculating. I am establishing the witness's credibility or lack thereof, and exploring potential biases. This is highly relevant. Overruled, Judge Ellis said, her gaze fixed on Claire. Answer the question, Ms. Morgan. It was a minor disagreement, Claire said, her face flushing a deep crimson, her eyes darting nervously. About a personal matter. Nothing serious enough to warrant this line of questioning. Minor, I said, allowing the word to linger, heavy with unspoken doubt. Your Honor, I have no further questions for Ms. Morgan at this time, but I reserve the right to recall this witness should new information come to light. My gaze lingered on Claire, who refused to meet my eyes. The court adjourned, with the next hearing set for 2 weeks later. The air was thick with unspoken questions, and I could feel the jury's attention shifting, their initial certainty about Daniel beginning to erode. The third hearing. The prosecution's next witness was Olivia's new boyfriend, Ryan Coleman, a slick 30-year-old real estate agent whose polished appearance barely concealed a nervous energy. Ryan's statement, delivered with a practiced sincerity, seamlessly reinforced the prosecution's existing narrative. Daniel was a dangerously jealous ex who simply couldn't move on from the relationship. He claimed to have personally seen Daniel near Olivia's apartment in Lincoln Park just a few days before the murder, describing Daniel as looking agitated and pacing suspiciously. Ryan also testified that Olivia had expressed deep fears about Daniel, confiding that she believed he might do something drastic. His testimony was designed to solidify Daniel's image as a volatile, dangerous individual. During my cross-examination, I approached Ryan with a deliberate, almost casual caution, observing his every subtle movement. Mr. Coleman, I began, my voice even, you started dating Olivia, if I understand correctly, relatively shortly after her breakup with Daniel, isn't that right? Yes, that's correct, he said, his tone confident, almost smug. About 6 weeks after their engagement ended. And you claim, Mr. Coleman, that you saw Daniel near Olivia's apartment just a few days before her death? I asked, my eyes narrowing slightly. Yeah, that's right, he affirmed, nodding. He was standing across the street, just staring intently at her building. It was creepy. What time precisely was this alleged sighting, Mr. Coleman? I inquired, my pen poised over my notepad. Around 7 p.m., he replied without hesitation, his confidence still holding. Interesting, I said, producing a document from my brief, a copy of Daniel's gym records, and laying it on the stand. Mr. Coleman, Daniel's gym records, which include a time-stamped membership scan, show unequivocally that he was at a fitness center in Wicker Park at precisely 7 p.m. that evening, miles away from Lincoln Park. Care to clarify this rather significant discrepancy? Ryan's confident facade began to crack, a flicker of panic in his eyes. He shrugged, attempting nonchalance. Maybe I mixed up the time, he stammered, his voice losing its earlier conviction. It was a few days ago, after all. Or perhaps, Mr. Coleman, you mixed up the person, I suggested, my voice now sharper, more pointed. Mr. Coleman, how well did you truly know Claire Morgan, Olivia's best friend? We met a few times through Olivia, he said, attempting to regain his composure. She was Olivia's friend, that's all. Just a friend, Mr. Coleman? I asked, leaning in slightly, my gaze piercing. Isn't it true, Mr. Coleman, that you and Miss Morgan were seen together, looking rather cozy and intimate at a bar in Logan Square, just days after Olivia's tragic death? A time when one might expect you both to be in deep mourning. That's a complete lie, Ryan snapped, his carefully constructed composure finally slipping, his face contorting in anger. Objection, Your Honor. Harper shouted, her voice laced with desperation. Speculation, counsel is making baseless accusations. Your Honor, I countered, my voice unwavering. I am not speculating. I am exploring a very clear and potential motive. If Mr. Coleman and Ms. Morgan were secretly involved, it could certainly explain their mutual eagerness to falsely blame Daniel Foster for Olivia's murder. Overruled, the judge said, her eyes fixed on Ryan, who was now visibly agitated. Answer the question, Mr. Coleman. We were grieving, Ryan said, his voice strained, a sheen of sweat appearing on his forehead. It wasn't like that. We were just comforting each other. Grieving, I said, nodding slowly, the word dripping with skepticism. Mr. Coleman, where were you precisely between 10 p.m. and midnight on March 15th, the night Olivia Bennett was murdered? I was at home, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Alone. I had gone to bed early. No alibi, I noted, allowing the words to hang in the air, a stark contrast to Daniel's confirmed whereabouts. Yet you are remarkably quick to accuse Daniel Foster, Mr. Coleman. No further questions, Your Honor. I turned away, leaving Ryan Coleman squirming on the stand, his credibility severely damaged. The judge set the next hearing for a week later, a compressed timeline, clearly sensing the shifting tides of the trial, the fourth hearing. The defense's moment had arrived. I presented Daniel's alibi witness, his steadfast friend Lucas Hayes, a meticulous software engineer who had been with Daniel the entire night of the murder. Lucas, a man of quiet integrity, took the stand and swore under oath that Daniel had been continuously by his side at a bustling bar in Wicker Park, the Rusty Anchor, from 9 p.m. until well past midnight, around 1 a.m., drinking beers and enthusiastically watching a pivotal basketball game. To corroborate his testimony, I presented irrefutable evidence. Detailed bar receipts with timestamps and a clear, time-stamped selfie of the two friends, taken at 10:30 p.m., clearly showing Daniel in the background, unmistakably confirming their presence miles from the crime scene during the critical time of death. During my brief cross-examination of Lucas, designed to reinforce his unwavering testimony, I asked, Mr. Hayes, was Daniel with you the entire time, without interruption, between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. on March 15th? Absolutely, Lucas said confidently, meeting my gaze directly. We were at the bar cheering loudly for the Bulls. He never left my sight, not for a single moment. We even went to the restroom together. And you are absolutely certain of the time, Mr. Hayes? I asked, just to underscore the point. Positive, he affirmed. I posted that selfie at 10:30 p.m. precisely, and Daniel is clearly visible in it, holding a beer. No further questions, Your Honor, I said, turning to the judge, a sense of quiet triumph in my voice. The defense witness, supported by irrefutable documentation, definitively establishes that Daniel Foster was miles from the crime scene during the exact time of death. The prosecution, visibly rattled, called their final witness Ethan Walsh, a nervous street vendor who claimed to have seen Daniel near the alley around 10:15 p.m. Ethan, a wiry man in his 40s with shifty eyes, delivered his statement with a forced conviction, describing a man in a dark jacket acting nervous and pacing anxiously near the crime scene. He seemed to be reciting a script. I approached Ethan for cross-examination, my demeanor calm but my internal focus razor-sharp. Mr. Walsh, I began, my voice soft, almost conversational, you claim to have seen a man you believe was Daniel Foster near the alley at approximately 10:15 p.m. on the night of the murder? Yes, sir, he said, nodding vigorously, perhaps too vigorously. He was pacing, looking around furtively, like he was waiting for someone or something. A dark jacket, I said, holding up the locket photo again, but gesturing towards the general area of the alley. Anything else distinctive about this individual, Mr. Walsh? Any other details you can recall? Just the dark jacket, he repeated, his eyes darting around the courtroom. And his build matched what I'd seen of Daniel on the news. His build, I said, allowing a subtle smirk to play on my lips. Mr. Walsh, how far, precisely, were you from this man you claim was Daniel Foster? About 30 feet, he said, his voice a little less steady now. Maybe 40. 30 to 40 feet, Mr. Walsh, at night, in a dimly lit alley, with only the ambient glow of distant streetlights, I articulated, painting the scene for the jury. And you are absolutely certain, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that it was Daniel Foster you saw? I'm sure, he insisted, though his conviction was rapidly eroding. Did you see his face clearly, Mr. Walsh? I pressed, my voice hardening slightly. Not clearly, no, he admitted, his gaze dropping. But the jacket was like his, very similar. The jacket, I said, turning dramatically to face the jury, my voice booming slightly. Mr. Walsh, Daniel Foster was, in fact, wearing a distinctive grey hoodie that night, a detail confirmed by his friend Lucas Hayes and further corroborated by security footage from the bar. Care to revise your statement about the dark jacket? I could have been wrong, he stammered, his face paling, sweat beading on his forehead. His composure shattered. Wrong, I said, pouncing, my voice now accusatory. Or, Mr. Walsh, were you perhaps paid to lie? Mr. Walsh, isn't it true that you currently owe a significant sum of money to a local loan shark, and that someone recently offered to clear your substantial debt in exchange for this very testimony? That's absurd. A complete fabrication, he snapped, but his eyes wide with panic betrayed the truth. He glanced nervously towards the back of the courtroom. Absurd, I said, glancing pointedly at my journalist contact Sarah Klein, who was furiously scribbling notes in the audience, a subtle nod passing between us. Mr. Walsh, did you see anyone else, anyone at all, near that alley on the night of the murder? No, he said, his voice barely a whisper, his body trembling. Not even Ryan Coleman, I asked sharply, dropping the name like a stone into still water. His face went utterly ashen. I didn't say that, he whispered, his eyes wide with terror. But you didn't say it wasn't him either, did you, Mr. Walsh? I said, tightening the trap, my voice a low, dangerous growl. Your Honor, the witness's testimony is not merely unreliable, it is demonstrably false and potentially perjurious. I respectfully request that his financial records be immediately investigated for any suspicious large payments. Noted, Judge Ellis said, her expression now grim, her gaze fixed on the trembling witness. Anything further, Mr. Reynolds? 1. Final question, Mr. Walsh, I said, my eyes boring into his. What kind of shoes was the man you saw wearing? I didn't notice, he said, rubbing his neck nervously, unable to meet my gaze. Exactly, I said, turning decisively to the judge. No further questions, Your Honor. The witness's vague, inconsistent, and now clearly contradictory account proves beyond any doubt that he is either profoundly mistaken or more likely complicit in a deliberate attempt to mislead this court, as Ethan Walsh stumbled down from the stand, his legs seemingly unable to support him. He muttered almost inaudibly, I didn't mean to. They promised I'd be safe. They said Daniel was guilty. Mr. Walsh, I called out, but the judge, her face a mask of stern authority, banged her gavel sharply. Order! Order in the court! I faced the judge, my voice clear and resolute. Your Honor, based on the witness's clear distress and his muttered confession, I formally request that Ethan Walsh be immediately detained for possible perjury and obstruction of justice. Judge Ellis, after a moment of intense deliberation, ordered Ethan detained, and the courtroom erupted into a cacophony of murmurs, gasps, and excited whispers. Moments later, under the intense pressure of imminent arrest and the realization that his protectors had abandoned him, Ethan Walsh broke down completely, confessing in a torrent of words that he'd been paid a substantial sum to lie about seeing Daniel. He pointed a trembling finger directly at Ryan Coleman, revealing that Ryan had offered him $5,000 to both plant the locket at the crime scene and provide false testimony. The locket, he admitted, had been stolen from Daniel's apartment during a casual visit weeks prior. The final hearing, with Ethan's dramatic and damning confession, the prosecution's entire case against Daniel Foster collapsed with astonishing speed, like a house of cards in a hurricane. Under intense, relentless questioning from the prosecution, who were now desperate to salvage their reputation, Ryan Coleman finally cracked. His carefully constructed facade crumbled, revealing the true monster beneath. He admitted, in a broken voice, that he had indeed killed Olivia. He revealed the sordid truth. He and Claire Morgan had been secretly involved in a passionate affair behind Olivia's back for months. When Olivia, by chance, discovered their betrayal and furiously threatened to expose their illicit relationship to everyone, Ryan panicked. In a desperate attempt to silence her and protect his reputation, he lured her to the deserted alley under the false pretense of a final, conciliatory conversation. But the discussion quickly devolved into a heated, violent confrontation. In a blind, uncontrollable rage, fueled by fear and anger, he strangled her. Then, with chilling premeditation, planted Daniel's locket, which he had indeed stolen from Daniel's apartment weeks earlier during a seemingly innocent visit, to meticulously frame his innocent rival. Claire, consumed by her own guilt and desperate to protect Ryan, the man she loved, had willingly corroborated the false narrative about Daniel's supposed threats, weaving a web of lies that almost cost Daniel his freedom. The court, with swift and decisive action, acquitted Daniel Foster of all charges. The verdict was met with a collective gasp of relief from the defense side and a stunned silence from the prosecution. Moments later, Ryan Coleman and Claire Morgan were formally arrested in the courtroom. Their faces a mixture of despair and disbelief, their betrayal finally exposed for all to see. Olivia's tragic death was ultimately revealed to be a devastating consequence of profound betrayal, unchecked greed, and a desperate attempt to escape accountability. It served as a stark, poignant reminder that justice, though sometimes agonizingly delayed and requiring relentless pursuit, can, and often does, prevail in the end. Daniel walked out of the courtroom a free man, blinking in the sunlight, a ghost of his former self, but with the weight of an unjust accusation finally lifted.